morning. Good to see you in the sunshine. So good. I'm Pastor Sarah, if I haven't had a chance to meet you yet. We are in this season of conversations about forgiveness and just what it means to experience that and live that as Jesus-following people, which is, we really just intentionally want to start 2020 in this way, knowing this was a year that would hold many things, including an election. And so we wanted to position ourselves with a posture of openness, a posture of letting go, a way of just authentically engaging our own places and our own relationships where forgiveness has been hard, whether that's in extending forgiveness to others or receiving it for ourselves. And already it's been a fruitful and gracious and challenging conversation, yes? Yeah, and if you've missed some of it, you can always catch up. On the Salt House app, we have the video. It links to video. You can get to the audio of it, so check those out if you've missed them. But today, the conversation continues. We are fortunate to have with us Rabbi Ted Falcon. Woo, woo, woo. We intentionally wanted to hear a voice in this conversation that when we're talking about forgiveness, that draws us into the larger narrative of the story of God. Remembering that as we listen to Jesus teach about and embody forgiveness, that he is a Jewish Jesus, right? Yes, Jesus is formed and informed by Judaism. So paying attention to our Jewish siblings is like sitting at the feet of our ancestors, right? We're hearing our family story. It's our shared story together. So we welcome back Rabbi Ted, and this is his third time at Salt House. Rabbi Ted has become a dear friend for me personally and a great just spiritual mentor for me, and he's a gift for us here at Salt House. In his decades of ministry, he's launched and formed progressive Jewish faith communities. He's a continuing voice of interfaith dialogue, joining conversations between Muslim, Christian, and Jewish folks, and he's someone with a great affection for Jesus too, which is great. So friends, take a deep breath with me. We open ourselves up to God. We begin to settle into our own experiences of forgiveness, and we are met here by our Creator as we learn and experience forgiveness through a Jewish lens. So welcome back, Rabbi Ted.
I actually do that to test the poor person who sits at the sound booth. I'll tell you, first of all, it's a pleasure for me to be here. This is a sweet place. Aside from you really make nice videos. Jason? Well, there you go. Does he have any free time? Look, I have to tell you, first of all, the most important thing about today. I don't know how you are in the morning, but I tend to open up and look at the news. And then I realize, I wish I hadn't done that. But today I saw something that I am just so glad I saw, because today is something that has not happened for 909 years. You know what that is? There you go. It is not that a rabbi is speaking at a Lutheran church. It is... It's a palindrome, the date. Palindrome is something that's the same read both ways. This is 02022020. And the amazing thing is that it's 909 years since that's happened, and that's a palindrome. So that's it. I don't have anything quite as important as that to... I wanted to talk, it's really a gift for me to talk about forgiveness. Because I actually experience forgiveness as a spiritual path. People talk about forgiveness as something that's kind of glib. I forgive you. Please forgive me. And I think forgiveness is one of the most challenging, really most challenging of events to really open. But before I talk about some of the stages of forgiveness that I see in my tradition, I want to ask a different question, namely, for what do we need forgiveness? You know, like we have this idea that there's sin. And you wonder, what's sin? Like, sometimes it feels like when we cause pain to another, that's something for which we need forgiveness. Sometimes we think that when we cause pain to ourselves, that's something for which we need forgiveness. That's somehow sin. Somehow, when we look at the arc of history and we look at some of the, I wish it was unbelievable, suffering that we have caused to our brothers and our sisters, to our children, we think that's sin. But I think all those acts, all that unkindness, all that lack of compassion, all that lack of treating each other in loving and compassionate ways, actually is a consequence of sin. In my tradition, the ultimate sin is forgetting who we are. It's forgetting that we are expressions of a single life. We are expressions of a single being. What awakens within each and every one of us is a common life, a shared consciousness. And each of us has the responsibility to care for that precious kernel of being, that precious spark of life, that precious piece of consciousness from the particular location in which we walk. Nobody's in there with you. You know, each of you is viewing this moment from the veil of your thoughts, of your concerns, of your yearnings, of your issues. And each of us is caught in this remarkable dilemma of living in a world where we appear separate from each other. And when we buy into that separateness, we cause ourselves and each other incredible pain. Sin is forgetting who we are. Sin is forgetting that we are all connected. Sin is forgetting that the golden rule is actually not a rule. It reflects a reality. Whatever we do to another, we are essentially doing to ourselves. Bring pain to another, we're bringing pain to us all. Bring joy to another, we're bringing joy to us all. Support healing of another, we're supporting healing for us all. The pain and the sin of disconnection. I mean, that's what all authentic spiritual traditions are about, namely reminding us that we are in fact expressions of one life. Precious. All authentic spiritual teachers are saying the same thing. I don't care what tradition. It's actually not owned by any tradition. As great as the world's spiritual teachers are, they don't own it. They share a common reality. So we look at the particular evidence of our forgetting. And the particular evidence of our forgetting will be the pain we cause to others and the pain we cause to ourselves. And we have a tendency of saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. will you forgive me? And the other person will say either, yeah, usually, yeah, thinking that that does something. It does something like verbally, but it doesn't do anything. Do you know the consequence of realizing that you haven't forgiven? I mean, let's say somebody really acted in a deeply unkind way. And when somebody acts toward us in a deeply unkind way, we have a response. And part of that response is mental, and part of that response is emotional, and part of that response actually is physical. There's a tightening. And when we forgive, we're trying to let go of that reactivity. And then when we see that person, or when we think of that thing, or when we wake up in the middle of the night and start rehearsing a conversation that we wish we could have with that person or with those people, we know that forgiveness actually didn't go so deep. When we see them, or when we think of them, or when we think of that act and we feel that, we know that something hasn't taken root in a way that, so that forgiveness becomes a verbal posture rather than a reality of being. In my tradition, there are 3 stages that are talked about. The High Holy Day Liturgy, which is to say the liturgy that focuses particularly on the Day of Atonement, or the Day of At-One-ment, called Yom Kippur. We ask forgiveness, Salach Lanu, like Holy One, Salach Lanu, forgive us, Machal Lanu, set us free, V'kaper Lanu, and grant us atonement. And it seems that those are the 3 stages. And the first stage is wanting to forgive. Why do I want to forgive? I don't want to forgive to let somebody else off the hook. I want to forgive to let me off the hook. My forgiveness is not about changing anything for the other person. That's their business. I can't do it for you. It's hard enough to do it for myself. I want to forgive because I want to let myself off the hook. I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and have conversations. I don't want to be thinking about this. I don't want to be talking about my friends, about what that group did or what that group didn't do. I don't want to define myself as cluster of resentment against them. So I say, I want to forgive. I want to forgive. And actually that works as long as we're conscious. Unfortunately, we don't stay conscious very long. So as long as I'm thinking I forgive, that's not forgetting. You're quite right. I mean, the video's perfect. Forgiving is not forgetting, but it's no longer being controlled by the anguish or the pain of what we remember either having been done to us, or remember what we've done to ourselves, or remember what we've done to someone else. But the first step is going to be, I want to forgive. And it's never enough. And the second stage, the forgotten one, is the much more difficult. Michal Lanu, set us free, free us. I get free when I no longer want the past to be any different than it was. I mean, if you think about it, what was, whether I want it to be or not, what was. And when I don't allow what was to be was, would you cut me off on when I... When I don't allow what was to have been, then I'm caught in it. I'm caught in it. It's as if we carry around our necks that which has hurt us, or that which we have done. And it's extremely painful. Yeah, the first step of forgiveness is deciding I want to forgive. I want to set myself free. I want to give the other person an opportunity to set themselves free. Setting ourselves free leads to no longer needing to act in the ways that we've acted, either toward ourselves or toward others. But the second step is, and this is the hardest one, choosing our past to be what it was. Oh, you can just feel the ego going, I can't do that. It should not have been that way. Well, okay, but our shoulding keeps us stuck. And the question is, do we want to live in a past pocket of pain, or do we want to live in a moment of possibility, a moment of unfolding a potential which the lack of forgiveness eclipses? The first stage is choosing, I want to forgive. I want to let go. This is not good for my health. It's not good for my consciousness. It's not good for anybody. And the second stage is freeing myself from the need for anything to have been other than it was. It's just so logical. I mean, if you think about it, I'd like to go back and do some things differently, but at least on this level of reality, I can't do that. And then the third stage, kaper lanu, atonement. It's like, what's atonement? Seems to me that atonement is doing something in my world today that I could not have done had the past been any different than it was. Which is to say, the transformation of pain into promise, the transformation of guilt into possibility. In what way have I become more sensitive through the pain that I have experienced? In what way have I become clearer because of what I found myself doing to another or to myself? What can I do today that in fact I could not have done had the past been any different than it was? Because if I really honor the past, then I want to know what have I learned? And not what have I learned just consciously, but what have I learned? What have I learned to watch out for? What have I learned? Like, where are my wounds that I'm likely to walk into my world? To what am I reactive? A choice to forgive, to let ourselves off the hook. A choice to choose the past. And a choice to walk in the world, to contribute something to the world in a healing way that I could not have done had not the past been exactly what it was. Forgiveness is a spiritual path because it's a continual practice. Part of the consequence of being human is that we are the beings who get to forget. We get to forget the life we share. We come to a place like this to remember. And it's a great place. And then we walk into the world and we're done. You know, it's like, how do we remember on Monday and how do we remember on Tuesday? So in Jewish tradition, particularly in the more Hasidic, Hasidism, Chassid is a Hebrew word that means pious one. And there was a great spiritual revolution in the 18th century in Eastern Europe, the birth of a modern Hasidic tradition, a time of incredible darkness. I don't know, most of you are not Jewish, so you probably don't identify with some of the historical consequences of being Jewish in a largely Christian world. For some Christians and for many Christians, historically, the existence of Jews is kind of inconvenient. Because Christianity was supposed to supplant Judaism. So there's no more need for it. What are these people doing? And I confess that some of us are embarrassments, but sometimes it goes beyond just discomfort. At any rate, at a time of great darkness in the 18th century in Eastern Europe, a time of pogroms, a pogrom was when kind of the ruling authorities would raid through Jewish communities and kill people. And there was very little protection on any governmental level. At any rate, it was a difficult time, and the tendency was the Jewish community tended to turn inward in itself, and the learning didn't go out, it went in. And in the midst of that, a teacher awakened and brought a message of deep joy and singing and dancing. And from that tradition came a prayer of forgiveness. And it has made its way into traditional prayer books of today. And it's going to be on the screen, I bet. The amazing thing about this screen thing, like I speak in many churches. This is the first one where there's a screen that the speaker and singers can see. However, today I noticed that had I not known the screen was here, as the singers are singing, they're looking to heaven. And I'm just thinking, wow. Whew. Just transmission, So this, there's going to be several slides of this, but this is in the prayer book as a prayer that is to be recited every night. Every night. And it starts with letting go. Letting go. Ribono Shel Olam are three Hebrew words for one of the great grandsons of the originator of the 18th century Hasidic movement. And I'm not going to tell you all the names now because I see most of you are not taking notes. And one of the great grandsons used Ribono Shel Olam, which means master of the universe. It was really an affirmation for him that there is a master of the universe. There is something greater going on here. He used that as his mantra for meditation. Ribono Shel Olam, Ribono Shel Olam. A lot of us use Sanskrit mantras. Some of us use Hebrew mantras. Some of us use English mantras. But it's a way of focusing consciousness. Ribono Shel Olam. There's something bigger. Imagine, I'm going to invite you in a couple moments to read this with me. But I don't want you to read this unless you're willing to enter into it. And I won't, it's totally up to you whether you read it or not. But take a look at it. You could just feel the ego, the individual wounded part of ourselves going, can I really let that go? Well, if I don't let it go, I'm going to just carry it with me. Do I want to carry that act? Do I want to carry that person with me? Some people are surprised by the line in this incarnation or any other but there are elements of Jewish tradition which see the life we carry as an ongoing life, which really appreciate that life and death are not opposites. Birth and death are opposites. Life is that stream that flows through many births and many deaths. That we, each and every one of us, are incarnated. And I invite you to say it with me, including the Ribono Shel Olam, just a recognition that we are always in the presence of that which is greater. So if it's right for you, join me. Ribono Shel Olam, source of all being, I now seek to forgive all who have hurt me, all who have done me wrong, whether deliberately or by accident, whether by words, by deed, or by thought, whether against my pride, my person, or my property, in this incarnation or in any other, may no one be punished on my account. And just read this to yourself first. And if it's right for you, join me. And may it be thy will, Eternal One, my God and the God of my fathers and mothers, that I be no more bound by the wrongs which I have committed, that I be free from patterns which cause pain to me and to others, that I no longer do that which is contrary to your loving presence. And feel into these words. And if it's right for you, join me. May my past failings be wiped away in your great mercy, Eternal One, and may they not manifest through pain and suffering. Let my words, my thoughts, my meditations, and my acts flow from the fullness of your being, Eternal One, source of my being and my Redeemer. And that's the prayer. And it's going to be available through the website of Salt House Church and through there to the universe. On Rosh Hashanah, which is literally means New Year's, the head of the year, it's the beginning of the Jewish High Holy Days in the fall, there is a kind of remarkable passage where the image is all of creation passes before the throne of God to be judged. Each and every being. And when I was growing up, I hated that. I just hated that whole idea. First of all, I didn't like the idea that God was like some father watching. I don't know how many of you have ever been an adolescent male, but you really, you don't want somebody looking in at you all the time. And there got to be a certain point where it became clear to me that if I'm going to be judged, my best chance is being judged by God. Like the harshest judge I have is me. Nobody judges me as harshly as I do. All you got to do is check into the voice that's inside your head, the way you talk to yourselves. Most of us, if we had a friend who talked to us the way we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't want to be around that friend. And it occurred to me that what it would mean to really stand in the presence of God is that it would be in the presence of a consciousness that knows it all, knows everything about me, outside, inside, past, present, what I see as future. And that presence does only one thing. That presence loves me. It loves me unconditionally. It means it doesn't love me when I do this and not loves me when I don't do this. When I'm closed, it's not that I'm not being loved, it's that I'm not available for the love that's being offered. God does not love at one moment and not love at another. It's we who are open or we who are closed. So I've grown to love that image of just standing naked in the presence of that consciousness that knows this whole thing. Every thought, oh my gosh. And if it could speak, that consciousness just says, I love you. I love you. You're exactly as you're supposed to be. You're exactly as I want you to be. That, my friends, is forgiveness. You're exactly as you're supposed to be.